Wedding photographers, what's the weirdest wedding you've attended to? Story 1. I once had the pleasure, if you can call it that, of shooting a wedding where the couple decided to go for a medieval theme. Now, I've seen themed weddings before, but this one was on a whole different level. They went all out with the costumes. Knights, princesses, the whole shebang. Even the guests were dressed up. The ceremony was held in a forest clearing, which was picturesque until the best man's armor got stuck on a tree branch. We spent a good 20 minutes trying to free him without ripping his costume. Eventually, we managed to untangle him, and the ceremony proceeded. Just as they were exchanging vows, a group of local LARPers, who must not have gotten the memo about the wedding, stumbled upon us. They mistook the wedding for an actual event in their game and tried to join in. Imagine the bride's face when a guy dressed as a troll started chanting spells. We had to explain the situation, and they apologized profusely, but it took a while to get back on track. The reception was held in a large tent nearby. Things seemed to be going smoothly until the caterers, who were also in on the theme, served a medieval feast that included whole roasted pigs and giant turkey leg. It was quite the sight, but not everyone appreciated the authenticity. Some guests, expecting typical wedding fare, were a bit put off by the sight of a whole pig with an apple in its mouth. Halfway through the reception, one of the groomsmen decided it would be a good idea to challenge another guest to a jousting match. They used broomsticks and garbage can lids as makeshift lances and shield. The bride was not amused when they crashed into the dessert table, sending the wedding cake flying. By the end of the night, everyone was a bit tipsy, and the dancing devolved into what can only be described as a medieval mosh pit. I captured some great photos, but the whole experience was something I'll never forget. The couple loved the photos, and in the end, that's what matters. But man, what a wild ride that was. Story 2. I'll never forget the wedding where the groom's ex showed up uninvited. It started off as a beautiful day at a vineyard, the kind of place where you can almost taste the romance in the air. The bride and groom looked stunning, and everything seemed to be going according to plan until she arrived. Midway through the ceremony, a car screeched to a halt on the gravel driveway. Everyone turned to see this woman, dressed to the nines, storming towards the altar. You could feel the tension ripple through the crowd. She marched right up to the groom and started shouting, "How could you do this to me, Tom?" The bride looked like she'd been slapped. Tom, the groom, turned beet red and stammered, "Rachel, this isn't the time." But Rachel wasn't having any of it. She started accusing him of all sorts of things, from cheating to stealing her dog. The officiant, trying to maintain some semblance of decorum, suggested they move the ceremony inside. So, we all shuffled into the reception hall. The bride was visibly shaken, but she tried to keep it together. They resumed the ceremony, and just as they were about to say their vows, Rachel burst in again. This time, she grabbed a glass of champagne and threw it in Tom's face. Chaos erupted. Guests tried to intervene, but Rachel was on a mission. Security finally escorted her out, but the damage was done. The bride was in tears, and Tom looked like he wanted to crawl under a rock. They somehow managed to get through the rest of the ceremony, but the reception was a somber affair. The highlight of the night was the best man's speech, where he joked, "Well, at least we know Tom's past won't come back to haunt him." Again. The photos turned out surprisingly well, considering the drama. The couple even laughed about it when they saw the pictures. But man, that was one wedding I won't forget anytime soon. Story 3. A beach wedding sounds like a dream, right? Well, not when there's a hurricane warning. This couple had planned their big day on a picturesque stretch of sand, with the ocean as their backdrop. But Mother Nature had other plans. The day started off sunny and perfect. But as the ceremony time approached, dark clouds rolled in. The couple decided to go ahead with the outdoor setup, despite the ominous weather. They figured it would pass. Just as the bride walked down the aisle, the wind picked up and it started to drizzle. I was snapping away, trying to capture the moment, when suddenly, a gust of wind lifted the entire archway off the ground. It came crashing down, narrowly missing the bridal party. People started scrambling for cover as the rain turned into a torrential downpour. The bride's dress was soaked, and the groom's hair was plastered to his forehead. "Everybody inside!" the wedding planner yelled. We all rushed to the beach house, drenched and shivering. The ceremony resumed in the living room, with everyone crammed together, trying to find a dry spot. It was chaotic, but there was something heartwarming about everyone huddled together, making the best of a bad situation. Just when we thought it couldn't get worse, the power went out. The officiant, bless her heart, continued by candlelight. The couple exchanged vows with the sound of the storm raging outside. It was strangely romantic, in a way, like something out of a movie. The reception turned into a candlelit dinner, and the guests took it in stride. There was a lot of laughter, some tears, and a whole lot of improvisation. The couple even danced to music played from a guest's phone. It wasn't the wedding they had planned, but it was memorable. When I delivered the photos, the couple was thrilled. They said it was the most unforgettable day of their lives, and they wouldn't change a thing. Looking back, I guess the storm added a touch of drama that no one would forget. Story 4. One time I shot a wedding that turned into a full-blown soap opera. The ceremony was held in a quaint little chapel, and everything was going smoothly until the reception. It started innocently enough, with the usual toasts and speeches, but then the bride's brother, who was also the best man, got up to give his speech. "Now, I don't want to make this awkward," he started, swaying slightly, clearly a few drinks in. "But there's something everyone here needs to know." The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. He continued, "I've been in love with you, Claire, for years." The bride, Claire, turned as white as her dress. Her new husband, Jack, looked like he was ready to punch someone. The brother, undeterred, kept going. "Jack, you're a great guy, but Claire, I've loved you since we were kids. I can't stand by and watch you marry someone else without saying how I feel." The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Claire stood up, trying to calm the situation. "Michael, this isn't the time or place," she said, her voice shaking, but Michael wasn't done. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring. "Claire, if you have any doubts, please be with me." Jack exploded. He lunged at Michael, knocking the ring out of his hand. Guests screamed and tried to separate them. It was chaos. The wedding planner was in tears, and the officiant was praying under her breath. Somehow, they managed to pull Jack and Michael apart before any serious damage was done. The rest of the reception was a tense affair. Michael was escorted out, and Jack and Claire tried to salvage what was left of their day. They cut the cake, did the first dance, but the joy was gone. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. When I delivered the photos, Claire and Jack were surprisingly upbeat. They said the drama had brought them closer, and they were ready to face anything together. I hope that's true, but man, that was one wedding I wouldn't want to relive. Story 5. I once photographed a wedding where the bride and groom had no idea who half the guests were. It was a classic case of family meddling. The bride's mother had taken it upon herself to invite a bunch of people, most of whom neither the bride nor the groom had ever met. The ceremony was beautiful, held in a lush garden with flowers everywhere. But as soon as the reception started, it became clear that something was off. The bride and groom were going around, thanking guests for coming, and you could see the confusion on their faces. "Who are these people?" the bride whispered to the groom. He shrugged, equally bewildered. It wasn't until they confronted the bride's mother that the truth came out. "I thought it would be nice to invite some old friends and extended family," she said defensively. The couple tried to make the best of it, but it was awkward. One guest, a distant cousin or something, got drunk and started hitting on the bridesmaid. Another elderly relative complained loudly about the food. The bride's mother flitted around, oblivious to the chaos she had caused. At one point, the groom took the mic and said, "I'd like to thank everyone for coming, even those we've never met before. It's nice to make new friends on our wedding day." There was an uncomfortable chuckle from the crowd. The rest of the evening was a blur of awkward introductions and forced small talk. The bride and groom eventually retreated to a corner, surrounded by their actual friends, trying to enjoy their night. When I delivered the photos, they laughed at the absurdity of it all. They told me they were planning a second, smaller celebration with just their close friends and family. Story 6. There was this one wedding where the groom never showed up. I know, it sounds like something out of a movie, but it really happened. The wedding was set in a beautiful vineyard, and everything was ready to go. The guests were seated, the bride was stunning in her dress, but the groom was nowhere to be found. At first, everyone thought he was just running late. But as the minutes turned into an hour, the whispers started. The bride, Emily, was trying to hold it together, but you could see the panic in her eyes. The wedding planner was frantically making phone calls, but no one could reach him. Finally, Emily's father stood up and addressed the guests. "It seems we have a situation," he said, his voice steady but tense. "We're not sure where the groom is, but we appreciate your patience." Emily's mother was in tears, and her bridesmaids were doing their best to comfort her. The guests milled around, unsure of what to do. After another hour, Emily decided to call it. "I can't wait any longer," she said, tears streaming down her face. "He's not coming." The guests started to leave, offering their condolences and awkward hugs. Emily's father took charge, directing people to the reception area where they could at least enjoy the food and drinks. It was the most surreal scene, people eating and drinking, trying to make small talk while the bride sat in the corner, devastated. As a photographer, I felt completely helpless. I kept shooting, trying to capture the raw emotion of the moment, but it felt intrusive. Eventually, Emily pulled herself together enough to address the remaining guests. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't know what happened, but I'm grateful for your support." When I delivered the photos, Emily thanked me for capturing the day, even though it didn't go as planned. She said it helped her process what had happened and start to move on. It was one of the most heartbreaking jobs I've ever done, but also one of the most memorable. Story 7. I'll never forget the wedding where the bride's father brought a live tiger. Yes, you heard that right. a live tiger. The wedding was at this super fancy estate, the kind with sprawling gardens and fountains everywhere. The bride's family was loaded, and they wanted to make a statement. Everything was going smoothly until the reception. I was taking some candid shots when I heard a collective gasp from the guests. I turned around to see this enormous cage being wheeled in, and inside was a freaking tiger. The bride's father, grinning from ear to ear, announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Simba!" The bride's face was a mix of horror and shock. "Dad, what the hell?" she exclaimed. "It's a symbol of power and strength," he replied, clearly pleased with himself. But the tiger wasn't having it. It started pacing back and forth in the cage, clearly agitated by the noise and crowd. As the evening went on, things got worse. The guests were too scared to go near the cage, and the tiger kept growling. The hired handlers did their best to calm it, but it was clear the animal was stressed. The bride and groom tried to make the best of it, but you could tell they were mortified. Then, during the toast, the tiger let out a deafening roar, scaring the life out of everyone. A few guests even screamed and ran. The bride's father tried to laugh it off, but it was clear his grand gesture had backfired. The bride, near tears, asked the handlers to take the tiger away. When I delivered the photos, the bride said, "Well, at least we'll have a good story to tell." I couldn't argue with that. It was the most bizarre wedding I've ever been to, and I hope I never have to photograph another one with a live tiger. Story 8. One wedding I shot turned into an impromptu family reunion. The ceremony was set at a lovely country club, and everything seemed perfect. The bride and groom were high school sweethearts, and you could feel the love in the air. But things took a strange turn during the reception. As the bride was dancing with her father, an elderly woman hobbled up to the dance floor. "Excuse me, but are you James's daughter?" she asked, peering at the bride. "Yes, I am," the bride replied, looking puzzled. The woman smiled and said, "I'm your great-aunt Mildred." The bride looked shocked. "I didn't know I had a great-aunt Mildred," she said. Turns out Mildred had been estranged from the family for decades, and no one had thought to invite her. She had heard about the wedding through the grapevine and decided to crash it. Mildred wasn't the only surprise guest. As word spread about the uninvited aunt, more and more distant relatives started showing up. Cousins, second cousins, great uncles, you name it, they were there. The reception turned into a chaotic but heartwarming reunion, with everyone trying to catch up and piece together family history. At one point, the bride and groom just sat back and watched, bewildered. "I guess we should have planned a family reunion instead," the groom joked. Despite the unexpected guests, the atmosphere was joyous, and everyone had a great time. When I delivered the photos, the bride laughed and said, "We got way more than we bargained for, but it was perfect in its own crazy way. It was a whirlwind of a day, but seeing those long-lost relatives reconnect made it all worth it." Story 9. There was this one wedding where the bride's dog was the ring bearer. Now, I've seen pets at weddings before, but this dog was something else. It was a massive Great Dane named Zeus, and he was as tall as some of the guests when he stood on his hind legs. The ceremony was outdoors, with a beautiful gazebo as the focal point. As the wedding party lined up, I noticed Zeus sitting patiently with a pillow tied to his back, the rings securely fastened. When it was time for the rings, the bride's maid of honor called Zeus over. Everything was going smoothly until Zeus spotted a squirrel. In an instant, he took off, the pillow flapping wildly. The guests gasped as he barreled through the crowd, knocking over chairs and nearly taking out the flower girl. The groom tried to catch him, but Zeus was too fast. Eventually, Zeus cornered the squirrel by a tree, but the pillow was gone, and so were the rings. Panic set in as everyone started searching the ground. The bride, trying to keep calm, said, "Well, at least he didn't eat them." After a few tense minutes, the rings were found, and the ceremony continued. The reception was full of jokes about Zeus and the squirrel. The bride and groom even had a custom cake topper made with a tiny squirrel on it. When I delivered the photos, they laughed and said, "Zeus definitely made our day memorable." It was a chaotic scene, but it added a touch of humor and excitement to their special day. Story 10. One of the weirdest weddings I ever photographed involved a surprise flash mob. The couple was young and fun-loving, so I wasn't too surprised when they told me they had something special planned, but I had no idea what I was in for. The ceremony was beautiful, held in a charming little church. Afterward, everyone headed to the reception hall, where the usual toasts and speeches took place. Then, as the bride and groom took the floor for their first dance, the music abruptly changed to an upbeat pop song. Suddenly, half the guests jumped up and started dancing in sync. It was a full-blown flash mob, and they had clearly practiced. The bride and groom were in on it, too, joining the choreographed routine with perfect timing. The look on the other guests' faces was priceless. Complete shock and delight. As a photographer, it was a dream come true. The energy was incredible, and I captured some fantastic shots of everyone dancing and laughing. Even the older guests got into it, clapping along and taking videos on their phones. The flash mob ended with everyone forming a circle around the bride and groom, who then shared a kiss to wild applause. The rest of the night was a nonstop party, with guests taking turns showing off their best moves. When I delivered the photos, the couple was thrilled. We wanted our wedding to be fun and unforgettable, and you captured it perfectly, they said. It was one of the most unique and joyous weddings I've ever had the pleasure of photographing. Story 11. I once photographed a wedding that felt more like a circus. The bride and groom were big fans of carnivals, so they decided to incorporate that theme into their wedding. It was held at a local fairground, complete with rides, games, and even a cotton candy machine. The ceremony took place on a small stage, decorated with colorful streamers and balloons. The bride arrived in a horse-drawn carriage, and the groom made his entrance by riding a unicycle down the aisle. It was quirky and fun, and the guests loved it. After the ceremony, the reception turned into a full-fledged carnival. There were jugglers, clowns, and even a fire eater. Guests enjoyed rides on the Ferris wheel and played games to win stuffed animals. The bride and groom had their first dance on the carousel, which made for some magical photos. The highlight of the night was the pie-eating contest. The groom, known for his competitive spirit, insisted on participating. He ended up with pie all over his face, but he didn't care. He was having the time of his life. The bride joined in too, and soon they were both covered in whipped cream, laughing hysterically. When I delivered the photos, the couple was ecstatic. "You captured our day perfectly," they said. "It was exactly what we wanted. Fun, unique, and full of memory. It was definitely one of the most unconventional weddings I've ever attended, but also one of the most enjoyable." Story 12. One of the most bizarre weddings I've ever shot involved a surprise double wedding. The couple had kept their plans a secret, so none of the guests knew what was coming. The ceremony was set in a picturesque garden, with flowers in full bloom and a gentle breeze in the air. The bride and groom said their vows, and just as the officiant was about to pronounce them husband and wife, he paused. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement," he said. "Today, we are also celebrating the union of another couple." Gasps of surprise rippled through the crowd as the groom's brother and the bride's sister stepped forward, holding hands. They had secretly planned to get married at the same time, turning the single wedding into a double ceremony. The reactions were a mix of shock and delight. The second couple quickly exchanged vows, and both couples were pronounced married. The reception that followed was a whirlwind of excitement and confusion. Guests were congratulating two brides and two grooms, and the dance floor was packed with people celebrating double the love. The cake cutting was especially chaotic, with 2 cakes and 4 hands trying to cut slices simultaneously. But it was all in good fun, and the atmosphere was electric. The photos I captured were full of joy and laughter, with everyone embracing the unexpected twist. When I delivered the photos, both couples were thrilled. "We wanted to surprise everyone, and you captured their reactions perfectly," they said. It was a whirlwind of a day, but it was clear that... Story 13. One wedding I photographed took place at a haunted mansion. The couple was really into the paranormal and decided to tie the knot at a location known for its ghostly inhabitants. It was an old Victorian house with creaky floors and an eerie vibe that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The ceremony was held in the grand ballroom, which was decked out with candles and antique furniture. As the bride walked down the aisle, you could almost feel the ghosts watching. The officiant was dressed like a 19th century reverend, adding to the spooky atmosphere. Everything was going smoothly until the reception. During the first dance, the lights started flickering. At first, everyone thought it was part of the show, but then the chandelier began to sway ominously. The bride, who had a sense of humor about the whole thing, laughed it off. "Looks like the ghosts want to dance too," she joked. But things got weirder. As dinner was being served, one of the servers dropped a tray of glasses. She swore she felt someone push her, but no one was around. Then, during the speeches, the groom's microphone cut out repeatedly. "Maybe the ghosts don't like what I have to say," he quipped, trying to keep the mood light. The real kicker came when the bride's bouquet flew off the table by itself. At least that's what it looked like. People started to get genuinely freaked out. A few guests even left early, spooked by the strange occurrences. Despite the ghostly interruptions, the couple loved their wedding. "It was exactly what we wanted, an unforgettable night with a touch of the supernatural," they told me when I delivered the photos. I have to admit, it was one of the most unique and eerie weddings I've ever photographed. Story 14. I once shot a wedding where the groom got lost on the way to the venue. It was a destination wedding in the mountains, and the groom, along with his groomsmen, decided to take a scenic route to the venue. They underestimated the complexity of mountain roads and ended up completely lost. The bride, oblivious to the unfolding drama, was getting ready with her bridesmaids. The guests were seated, and the ceremony was about to start when we got the call. The groom was somewhere in the wilderness with no clue how to get back. Panic set in as the wedding planner tried to figure out what to do. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep the guests entertained with impromptu photo sessions. The bride's father took charge, organizing games and trivia to keep everyone's spirits up. It was like a mini party before the actual ceremony, and surprisingly, the guests were enjoying themselves. After what felt like an eternity, the groom and his groomsmen finally arrived, disheveled and slightly embarrassed. They had been found by a park ranger who led them back to the venue. The bride, relieved but amused, greeted him with a kiss and a playful, "About time you showed up." The ceremony went off without a hitch, despite the delay. The guests were in high spirits, and the whole ordeal became a running joke for the rest of the night. The groom's speech included a heartfelt thank you to the park ranger who saved the day. When I delivered the photos, the couple laughed and said, "We'll never forget how our wedding started with an adventure." It was a chaotic day, but it made for some fantastic stories and memorable moments. Story 15. One of the most surreal weddings I ever photographed was a surprise wedding. The bride and groom had been together for years and decided to get married without telling anyone. They invited their friends and family to what they said was an engagement party, but when everyone arrived, they announced it was actually their wedding day. The guests were stunned, but once the shock wore off, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the air. The venue was beautifully decorated, with flowers and fairy lights everywhere. The couple had planned everything meticulously, right down to the smallest detail. The ceremony was held in the garden under a canopy of twinkling lights. As the bride walked down the aisle, her parents looked like they were going to cry tears of joy. The groom's best friend, who had been kept in the dark, couldn't stop grinning. "You sneaky bastards," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. The reception was one big celebration, with everyone dancing and laughing. The couple had hired a live band that played all their favorite songs, and the food was absolutely delicious. There was an open bar, and it didn't take long for the party to get into full swing. At one point, the groom grabbed the mic and said, "Thank you all for coming to our engagement party. Surprise! We're actually married now." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. It was clear that everyone was genuinely happy for them. When I delivered the photos, the couple was ecstatic. "We wanted our wedding to be a surprise and something special, and you captured it perfectly," they said. It was an incredible day, full of joy and spontaneity, and I felt lucky to be a part of it. Story 16. I once photographed a wedding where the bride and groom decided to switch traditional roles. The groom wore a dress, and the bride wore a tuxedo. They were both very artistic and wanted to challenge gender norms with their wedding attire. It was held in a modern art gallery, which suited their unique style perfectly. When the guests arrived, there were a lot of double takes and whispers, but the couple didn't care. They were having the time of their lives. The groom looked surprisingly graceful in his white dress, and the bride looked stunning in her tailored tuxedo. The ceremony was short, but beautiful. As the groom walked down the aisle, escorted by his mother, there were a few chuckles, but mostly smiles of approval. The bride waited at the altar, grinning from ear to ear. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The reception was just as unconventional. Instead of a traditional cake, they had a giant sculpture made of cupcakes. There were no assigned seats, and the whole evening felt more like a casual gathering of friends than a formal event. The couple had even hired a local indie band to play, giving the reception a relaxed festival vibe. At one point, the bride's father stood up to make a toast. "I never thought I'd see the day my daughter would be the one wearing the pants," he joked, raising his glass. The room burst into laughter, and you could feel the love and acceptance in the air. When I delivered the photos, the couple was thrilled. "You captured our day just as we imagined it. Fun, unique, and true to ourselves," they said. It was one of the most refreshing and inspiring weddings I've ever attended. Story 17. I once shot a wedding where the couple's dog, a hyperactive border collie named Max, played a major role. They had trained Max to be the ring bearer, and he was supposed to carry the rings down the aisle in a little pouch tied around his neck. It was a charming idea, but things didn't go quite as planned, right? The ceremony was outdoors in a beautiful park. As the music started and Max began his walk down the aisle, everything seemed fine. But then he spotted a squirrel. Without a second thought, he bolted after it, dragging the ring pouch along with him. The guests burst out laughing as Max chased the squirrel up a tree, completely ignoring the calls to come back. The groom had to run after Max and retrieve the rings himself. He finally caught up to the dog and managed to bring him back to the altar, slightly out of breath, but smiling. "Guess he's just really enthusiastic about his job," he joked, to the delight of the guests. The rest of the ceremony went smoothly, but Max wasn't done causing chaos. During the reception, he got into the food table, knocking over several trays of appetizers. The couple took it all in stride, laughing off each mishap. "That's Max for you," the bride said with a shrug. When I delivered the photos, the couple couldn't stop laughing. "You captured Max's antics perfectly," they said. "It wouldn't have been our wedding without a little bit of chaos." It was a day full of laughter and love, and Max certainly made it unforgettable. Story 18. One of the most unusual weddings I've ever photographed involved a surprise celebrity guest. The bride and groom were huge fans of a popular rock band, And unbeknownst to them, the bride's sister had managed to arrange for the lead singer to make an appearance at the reception. The ceremony was held in a rustic barn, beautifully decorated with twinkling lights and wildflowers. Everything was going perfectly, with touching vows and a lot of happy tears. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the adjacent field for the reception, which had a casual picnic-like atmosphere. As the evening progressed, the bride's sister took the stage and grabbed the mic. "I have a special surprise for the newlyweds," she announced, grinning from ear to ear. The crowd murmured in curiosity. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the lead singer of the band walked out. The bride and groom were absolutely floored. The bride started crying tears of joy, and the groom was speechless. The singer performed a few of their favorite songs, dedicating each one to the happy couple. It was an incredibly intimate and emotional moment. The rest of the night was like a dream. The singer stayed to mingle with the guests, taking photos and signing autographs. The bride and groom were on cloud nine, dancing and celebrating with their friends and family. The atmosphere was electric, filled with joy and excitement. When I delivered the photos, the couple was over the moon. "We still can't believe it happened," they said. "You captured the magic of the night perfectly." It was one of those rare events where everything aligned to create an unforgettable experience. Story 19. I once photographed a wedding that took place on a boat. The bride and groom were avid sailors and decided to get married on a yacht in the middle of the lake. It was a small, intimate ceremony with only close family and friends. Everything was going smoothly until the boat's engine failed halfway through the ceremony. The officiant had just started the vows when we heard a loud sputter, followed by complete silence. The boat drifted to a stop, and everyone looked around in confusion. The captain announced that there was a mechanical issue and that it would take some time to fix. The bride, determined to go on, smiled and said, "Well, we're already here. Let's finish this." So there we were, in the middle of the lake, finishing a wedding ceremony on a drifting boat. The gentle rocking of the boat added an unexpected but oddly romantic rhythm to the vows. The guests took it in stride, laughing and enjoying the unique experience. After the ceremony, the groom's father, who was an experienced sailor, helped the captain fix the engine. It took about an hour, during which the guests mingled, took photos, and enjoyed the stunning sunset over the water. It turned out to be an impromptu cocktail hour, with everyone sharing stories and sipping champagne. When the engine was finally up and running, we made our way back to the dock, where the reception was held. Despite the delay, the mood was jubilant, and the rest of the evening went off without a hitch. The couple later told me that the engine failure was a blessing in disguise. "It made our wedding so much more memorable," they said when I delivered the photos. "It was definitely an adventure, and one I'll never forget." Story 20. I once shot a wedding where the bride's bouquet was made entirely of succulent. The wedding was held in a botanical garden, and the bride, an avid plant lover, wanted something unique. The succulent bouquet was a stunning, albeit heavy piece of art. The wedding itself was beautiful, with the garden providing a lush green backdrop. The ceremony went off without a hitch, but things took a strange turn during the bouquet toss. As the bride turned her back and launched the bouquet over her shoulder, it broke apart in midair. Succulent pieces flew everywhere, and the guests ducked to avoid getting hit. One of the bridesmaids caught the largest chunk, but the rest of the bouquet scattered across the lawn. The guests burst into laughter, and the bride, though a bit disappointed, laughed along with them. "Well, I guess that's what happens when you throw a cactus," she joked. The wedding planner quickly gathered the scattered succulents and reassembled the bouquet as best as she could. The rest of the reception was filled with laughter and jokes about the flying succulent. The bride's father even made a speech saying, "I always knew my daughter's love for plants would grow into something amazing, but I didn't expect it to explode." It was a lighthearted moment that kept the mood festive. When I delivered the photos, the bride and groom loved the candid shots of the bouquet mishap. "It was one of the funniest moments of the day," they said. The succulent bouquet may not have stayed intact, but it certainly made for a memorable story and some great pictures. Story 21. One wedding I photographed took place in the middle of a music festival. The couple were huge fans of live music and decided to tie the knot at their favorite festival. They coordinated with the festival organizers to hold the ceremony on one of the smaller stages between sets. The day was a whirlwind of music, dancing, and celebration. The bride wore a bohemian dress, and the groom sported a stylish vest and hat. Their guests were a mix of festival-goers and close friends, all dressed in vibrant, eclectic outfits. As the time for the ceremony approached, the couple made their way to the stage. The officiant, a friend of the couple, grabbed the mic and welcomed everyone. "We're here to celebrate love and music," he said, and the crowd cheered. The ceremony was short and sweet, with the couple exchanging heartfelt vows to the sound of distant music, just as they shared their first kiss as a married couple. The next band started their set. The crowd went wild, and the newlyweds were treated to an impromptu concert. They danced on stage, surrounded by their friends and hundreds of festival goers who cheered them on. The rest of the day was a blur of music and celebration. The couple had their first dance at a nearby stage, and their reception was a picnic-style affair with food trucks and blankets spread out on the grass. Guests wandered between stages, enjoying the music and the unique atmosphere. When I delivered the photos, the couple was ecstatic. "It was the perfect blend of everything we love," they said. "It was definitely one of the most unconventional weddings I've ever photographed, but also one of the most joyful and energetic." Story 22. One of the most heartwarming weddings I ever photographed was for a couple who had been together for over 50 years. They had been high school sweethearts, but had lost touch after graduation. Decades later, they reconnected through a chance encounter and decided to get married. The wedding was held in a small, quaint chapel, with only close friends and family in attendance. The bride and groom, both in their 70s, were beaming with happiness. The ceremony was simple and filled with emotion. As they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The reception was held in the bride's daughter's backyard, decorated with fairy lights and vintage furniture. It had a nostalgic, homey feel that perfectly suited the couple. Their grandchildren served as the bridal party, and the couple's first dance was to their favorite song from the 1960s. During the reception, the groom stood up to make a toast. "I've loved this woman since we were teenagers," he said, his voice breaking. "And I'm so grateful we found our way back to each other." The guests clinked their glasses and cheered, celebrating the enduring love story. The evening was filled with laughter and stories from their youth. The couple's friends shared memories of their high school days, and their children talked about the joy of seeing their parents so happy. It was a touching celebration of love and family. When I delivered the photos, the couple was overjoyed. "These pictures capture our love story perfectly," they said. "It was an honor to document such a beautiful, timeless love, and it remains one of my favorite weddings to this day." Story 23. I once shot a wedding that was a complete masquerade ball. The couple loved the idea of mystery and elegance, so they asked all their guests to wear masks. The venue was a grand ballroom with chandeliers, velvet drapes, and an air of opulence. The ceremony was held in the main hall, with the guests seated in a semicircle around the couple. The bride wore a stunning gown with intricate lace, and her mask was adorned with feathers and jewels. The groom looked dashing in a classic tuxedo and a sleek black mask. As they exchanged vows, the flickering candlelight added to the magical ambience. The officiant, also wearing a mask, spoke about the beauty of love and the mystery of the future. It was a deeply moving ceremony, filled with romance and elegance. The reception was a lavish affair, with a string quartet playing classical music and waiters serving champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The guests mingled, their identities hidden behind their masks, creating an air of intrigue and excitement. The highlight of the evening was the unmasking. At midnight, the couple took the stage and invited everyone to remove their masks. There was a moment of suspense as the guests revealed their faces, followed by cheers and laughter. It was a symbolic moment, representing the unveiling of true selves and the beginning of a new chapter. When I delivered the photos, the couple was thrilled. "You captured the mystery and beauty of our night perfectly," they said. "It was one of the most elegant and enchanting weddings I've ever photographed, and the masquerade theme added a unique touch that made it unforgettable." Story 24. One wedding I photographed turned into a full-blown talent show. The bride and groom were both performers. She was a singer, and he was a comedian. They decided to make their wedding a celebration of their love and their talents, inviting their friends and family to join in the fun. The ceremony was held in a theater, with the couple exchanging vows on stage. The bride sang her vows to the groom, accompanied by a live band. The groom, in turn, delivered his vows as a stand-up comedy routine, leaving everyone in stitches. It was heartfelt and hilarious, perfectly reflecting their personalities. The reception was even more entertaining. The couple had set up a talent show, inviting guests to perform. There were singers, dancers, magicians, and even a juggling act. The bride's father played the guitar, and the groom's best friend did a hilarious impression of the groom. It was a night filled with laughter and applause. At one point, the bride and groom took the stage together. They performed a duet, their voices blending beautifully, and then segued into a comedy skit that had everyone rolling with laughter. Their chemistry was undeniable, and the love they had for each other was evident in every moment. When I delivered the photos, the couple was overjoyed. "You captured the spirit of our wedding perfectly." It was a unique and entertaining celebration, and it was clear that everyone had a fantastic time. It was one of the most fun and lively weddings I've ever attended, and I was glad to be a part of it. Story 25. I once photographed a wedding that took place in an amusement park. The couple were huge thrill seekers and wanted their big day to reflect their love of adventure. They rented out a section of the park for the entire day, and their guests were in for a wild ride. Literally. The ceremony took place on a platform overlooking the roller coaster. The bride arrived on a carousel horse, and the groom came down a zip line. It was an epic entrance that set the tone for the day. As they exchanged vows, you could hear the distant screams of people enjoying the rides, adding an unexpected soundtrack to the ceremony. After the ceremony, the fun really began. The couple had arranged for everyone to have unlimited access to the rides and games. The guests were encouraged to enjoy the park before heading to the reception area. It was a blast, seeing everyone, from kids to grandparents, riding roller coasters and bumper cars in their wedding attire. The reception was held in a large pavilion with carnival-themed decorations. There were cotton candy machines, popcorn stands, and a live band playing upbeat tunes. The couple's first dance was interrupted by a surprise flash mob, where the bridal party broke into a choreographed dance routine. The guests joined in, and soon the whole place was dancing. The highlight of the night was the cake cutting. Instead of a traditional cake, they had a giant, multi-tiered cake that looked like a Ferris wheel. As they cut the cake, the wheels spun and lights flashed, creating a spectacular display. When I delivered the photos, the couple couldn't stop smiling. "You captured the joy and excitement of our day perfectly," they said. "It was one of the most exhilarating weddings I've ever attended, and it truly reflected the couple's adventurous spirit." Story 26. I once photographed a wedding where the couple decided to have a potluck reception. They were both foodies and loved the idea of their friends and family contributing their favorite dishes to the celebration. The wedding was held in a beautiful rustic barn with long tables set up for the feast. The ceremony was simple and sweet, with the couple exchanging heartfelt vows under a canopy of twinkling lights. Afterward, the guests moved to the barn for the reception. The tables were laden with an incredible array of homemade dishes, from casseroles and salads to pies and cakes. As the evening went on, it became clear that some of the guests had gone above and beyond. One guest brought a whole roasted pig, while another set up a make-your-own sushi station. The bride's grandmother had baked dozens of her famous cookies, and the groom's uncle had brewed a special batch of beer just for the occasion. The atmosphere was warm and convivial, with everyone sharing stories and recipes. There were no caterers or servers. Everyone pitched in, passing dishes around and helping themselves. The couple moved from table to table, sampling the food and thanking their guests. The highlight of the night was the best dish contest. The couple had set up a voting station, and guests could vote for their favorite dish. The winner was a decadent chocolate cake made by the bride's best friend. She received a small trophy and a round of applause from everyone. When I delivered the photos, the couple was delighted. It was exactly how we imagined it. Full of love, laughter, and amazing food, they said. It was one of the most heartfelt and community-focused weddings I've ever been a part of, and it left a lasting impression. Story 27. One of the most touching weddings I ever photographed was a surprise vow renewal. The couple had been married for 25 years, and their children decided to surprise them with a vow renewal ceremony. They coordinated with their parents' closest friends and family to plan the event in secret. The ceremony was held in the couple's backyard, which had been beautifully decorated with fairy lights and flowers. The couple thought they were attending a simple family barbecue. When they arrived, they were greeted by their friends and family, all dressed up and smiling. The look of surprise and joy on their faces was priceless. Their eldest son took the mic and explained the surprise. "Mom and Dad, you've been an inspiration to all of us. We wanted to celebrate your love and commitment by renewing your vows today," he said. The couple was moved to tears as they walked down the makeshift aisle, hand in hand. The ceremony was officiated by their best friend, who had been with them through thick and thin. The couple exchanged heartfelt vows, reflecting on their journey together and the love that had only grown stronger over the years. The reception was a joyous celebration, with a live band playing their favorite songs and a slideshow of photos from their 25 years together. Their children gave speeches, sharing funny and touching stories about their parents. The night was filled with laughter, tears, and lots of dancing. When I delivered the photos, the couple was overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you for capturing such a special moment for us," they said. "It was a beautiful celebration of enduring love, and I felt honored to be a part of it." Story 28. I once shot a wedding that was entirely eco-friendly. The couple were passionate environmentalists and wanted their wedding to reflect their values. The ceremony and reception were held at an organic farm, and everything was planned with sustainability in mind. The invitations were made from recycled paper, and the bride's dress was a vintage find that she had altered. The groom wore a suit made from organic cotton. The ceremony took place in a field, with the guests seated on hay bales covered in fabric. The decorations were all handmade using locally sourced flowers and natural materials. The couple's vows included a commitment to each other and to the planet. They planted a tree together as a symbol of their love and their dedication to the environment. It was a touching moment that resonated with everyone present. The reception was a zero-waste event. The food was all locally sourced and organic, served on compostable plates. The couple had even arranged for a composting station where guests could dispose of their food scraps. The drinks were served in reusable glasses, and there was a water station with refillable bottles. The highlight of the night was the wedding favors. Instead of traditional gifts, the couple had planted saplings for each guest to take home and plant. It was a beautiful gesture that everyone appreciated. When I delivered the photos, the couple was thrilled. "You captured the essence of our day perfectly," they said. "It was one of the most thoughtful and environmentally conscious weddings I've ever attended, and it was inspiring to see how the couple integrated their values into their special day." Story 29. I once photographed a wedding where the theme was a night at the Oscars. The couple were huge movie buffs and wanted their wedding to feel like a glamorous Hollywood event. The ceremony and reception were held in a historic theater, complete with a red carpet entrance. The guests were asked to dress in their finest attire, and the couple spared no expense in creating an opulent, star-studded atmosphere. There were life-sized cutouts of their favorite movie stars, and the decorations included golden statuettes and movie posters. The ceremony took place on the theater stage, with dramatic lighting and a backdrop that looked like a classic movie set. The bride made her entrance to the sound of a full orchestra playing the theme from Gone with the Wind. The groom, waiting at the altar, looked like a leading man in his tuxedo. After the vows, the couple walked down the red carpet, posing for photos with their guests. The reception was a lavish affair, with a gourmet dinner and a live band playing movie soundtracks. There was even a photo booth where guests could take pictures with props from iconic films. The highlight of the night was the awards ceremony. The couple had created fun categories like Best Dance Moves and Most Dramatic Entrance. They handed out miniature Oscars to the winners, complete with acceptance speeches and music. When I delivered the photos, the couple was ecstatic. "It was everything we dreamed of and more," they said. "It was a glamorous and unforgettable night, and it felt like being part of a real Hollywood event." Story 30. One wedding I photographed was held in a castle. The couple, who were history buffs, decided to rent out an actual medieval castle for their big day. It was the kind of place you'd expect to find in a fairy tale, complete with stone walls, turrets, and a drawbridge. The ceremony was held in the Grand Hall, which was decorated with candles, tapestries, and suits of armor. The bride wore a flowing gown that looked like something out of a Renaissance painting, and the groom was dressed in a tailored suit with a vintage flair. As the couple exchanged vows, the room was filled with the soft glow of candlelight and the faint sound of a harp. It was an incredibly romantic setting, and you could feel the love and happiness in the air. After the ceremony, the guests were treated to a feast in the castle's banquet hall. The tables were laden with hearty dishes like roast beef, venison, and pheasant, and the wine flowed freely. The guests dined by torchlight, adding to the medieval ambiance. The evening's entertainment included a troupe of jugglers and a fire eater, as well as a string quartet playing classical music. At one point, the bride and groom snuck away for a private moment on the castle's parapets, where they watched the sunset together. When I delivered the photos, the couple was over the moon. "You captured the magic of our day perfectly," they said. "It was one of the most enchanting weddings I've ever attended, and the castle setting made it feel like a true fairy tale." Story 31. I once photographed a wedding where the theme was Alice in Wonderland. The couple were both fans of the classic story, and they wanted their wedding to feel like a whimsical journey through Wonderland. The ceremony and reception were held in a beautiful garden, with colorful decorations and quirky details. The bride wore a blue dress reminiscent of Alice's, and the groom donned a top hat and a bow tie. The bridal party was dressed as various characters from the story, including the Mad Hatter, the White Rabbit, and the Cheshire Cat. The ceremony took place under a large tree, with paper lanterns and giant mushrooms creating a magical atmosphere. As the bride walked down the aisle, a string quartet played a whimsical tune that set the perfect tone for the day. After the vows, the guests followed a curiouser and curiouser sign to the reception area, which was set up like a mad tea party. There were mismatched chairs, teapots filled with flowers, and playing cards scattered on the table. The cake was a topsy-turvy creation that looked like it had come straight out of Wonderland. The highlight of the reception was a game of croquet, complete with flamingo mallets and hedgehog ball. The guests had a blast trying to navigate the quirky course, and the bride and groom couldn't stop laughing. When I delivered the photos, the couple was thrilled. "It was exactly what we imagined, fun, whimsical, and totally us," they said. "It was one of the most creative and imaginative weddings I've ever photographed, and it felt like stepping into a storybook." Story 32. One of the most unique weddings I ever photographed was held in a treehouse. The couple loved nature and wanted an intimate, adventurous wedding. They found a stunning treehouse resort and decided it was the perfect place to exchange vows. The ceremony took place on a platform high in the trees with a breathtaking view of the forest below. The bride arrived by climbing a spiral staircase wrapped around an ancient oak, and the groom waited for her at the top, surrounded by their closest friends and family. As they exchanged vows, the sounds of the forest provided a natural soundtrack. Birds sang, leaves rustled in the breeze, and a nearby stream added a gentle background melody. It was a serene and beautiful setting, and everyone felt connected to nature. After the ceremony, the guests explored the various tree houses and bridges that made up the resort. The reception was held on a larger platform, with fairy lights strung between the trees and a rustic, woodsy theme. The tables were decorated with wildflowers and mason jar lanterns, and the food was all locally sourced and organic. The evening ended with a bonfire, where the couple and their guests roasted marshmallows and shared stories. The bride and groom even took a moment to stargaze from their treehouse balcony, enjoying the peacefulness of their surroundings. When I delivered the photos, the couple was delighted. "You captured the essence of our adventure," they said. "It was one of the most intimate and nature-filled weddings I've ever attended, and the treehouse setting made it truly special."